In 1940s Los Angeles, the city is caught between corrupt cops, ruthless mobsters, and men who do not know which side of the law they stand on. Former Marine-turned-detective Joe Teague is pulled into a dangerous war, where one secret could bring the whole city down. This is the series titled Mob City, recapped from start to finish. Enjoy! The story begins in New York in 1925, where three young men walk down the street with violin cases, but they are stopped by mobsters transporting alcohol, and the thugs quickly run a check for any weapons on the musicians. The mobsters force them to open up their violins and play, despite the men explaining that they are wandering the streets because the club they worked in got raided. Their music impresses a woman who comes over to tip them, but as the thugs are distracted by the incoming vehicles, the men take out their guns hidden inside the pram and open fire. The trio includes Bugsy Siegel, nicknamed Benny, the man who will invent Las Vegas in the next 20 years, with his partner Meyer Lansky, the future organizer of crime, and their close friend Sid Rothman, who is a sociopath. They kill everyone except one driver, letting him escape to inform the boss about the hijacking. After the shootout, Benny loads the stolen alcohol into a nearby car and plants dynamite in the vehicle they are leaving behind. But when he tries to drive off, the car doesn't start, making Lansky panic and scold him as the explosion comes near. Then Benny stays calm, tries the engine again, and finally gets the car moving before they escape. Fast forward to 1947 in Los Angeles. Joe Teague, a former Marine and current cop, receives an envelope in his mailbox that directs him to Bunny's Jungle Club. There he first meets a woman named Anya, who wonders why Joe doesn't say yes to her despite her multiple love confessions, and gets jealous when she realizes that Joe is here to meet someone else. Soon, Joe is joined by a man named Hecky Nash, who praises Joe's service as a Marine and mentions that Joe single-handedly managed to kill every Japanese soldier on Guadalcanal. Joe urges him to get to the point, making Hecky offer him $1,000 to watch his back when he meets with Sid and another mobster to exchange film negatives for money. Joe realizes that Hecky is blackmailing Sid and puts out his police badge on the table, but Hecky is confident that mobsters don't kill cops, as it is too difficult to clean up, so he wants Joe to accompany him and ensure that everything goes smoothly, before handing Joe his card in case Joe agrees to the job. Just as Hecky leaves, a man who had been following Hecky gets into a car and reports to his partner that Joe might be involved in their case. On the other side, an anxious man walks into the church and rushes towards the confessional booth, where Sid is in the priest's place, and orders the man to confess his crimes. The man explains that Leslie sabotaged the plan, explaining that Leslie gives him the creeps and should never have been hired in the first place. Sid says that he believes him, but still shoots the man dead before walking out of the church. The next day, the chief of the LAPD gives a speech about accusations of corruption in his department, and it is revealed that the two guys following Hecky were cops working under Detective Hal Morrison. He finds Hecky's file with Joe and eventually makes Joe reveal the job offer presented by Hecky, while Morrison warns Joe that the department is under strict scrutiny, but Joe clarifies that he was going to bring the case to him, as this might be their chance of catching a big mob boss. They quickly take the case to the future Chief Bill Parker, explaining the situation, and Parker sees it as an opportunity to take down somebody big and to cripple the LA mob. He orders them to bring in everyone involved in the exchange along with the evidence, urging Joe to prove himself. Once Parker leaves, Morrison explains to Joe about Parker possibly becoming the next chief and warns Joe to be in Parker's good book, as he is the type to help his friend move up the ladder. As Morrison's unit plans to bring down the blackmail exchange, they tell Joe that they've tried to get Hecky to become a witness for some time due to his connections with the mob and his expensive gambling addiction, but he never caves in. Joe wonders why they are tailing him now, so they explain that Hecky's finances are in serious decline as he owes a lot of money to the wrong people, making the police believe that he will eventually be cut loose by the mob. Once that happens, they want to offer him a way out of trouble by forcing him to be a witness against the mobs. They urge Joe to make the call to Hecky, saying that he has decided he wants in. Hecky instructs Joe to meet with him after he has finished a gig at Griffin, and that they'll drive together to an oil field in Baldwin Hills. This news frustrates the unit as they explain that the field is 1,100 acres of wide open terrain, making it impossible to hide in or even know where the exchange will take place. The closest they can be to Joe is over half a mile away, warning him that it will be at least 3 minutes before they can give him backup, and the area has interference so no signal can be sent using backup. Later, after Hecky wraps up his gig to an almost empty audience, he meets up with Joe backstage, telling him that he has been reduced to performing at such low points. Right before they leave, Hecky makes a quick phone call to his girlfriend Jasmine, urging her to be ready to leave town, and Joe can't help but overhear the conversation. While Joe and Hecky are waiting for the payoff, Joe makes one last effort to convince Hecky to back out of the blackmail and go to the cops instead with the evidence, even warning him that he is putting Jasmine in danger. However, Hecky doesn't budge, explaining that the money is going to be his way out and reveals that he is actually a childhood friend of mob boss Mickey Cohen. He comments that people like Mickey need to be in jail, reminiscing about an incident in 3rd grade when Hecky, Mickey, and another friend tried to rob a local movie theater, but Hecky ran out of fear and Mickey bullies him for that till today. Suddenly, the other party arrives, making Joe secretly prepare his flare while Hecky sends them a signal. Sid is not happy that Hecky brought a cop with him, and as they make the exchange, Joe reaches for his flare gun, but he notices the film negatives and stops. The payoff happens without any issues, and Hecky is celebrating when all of a sudden Joe puts 2 bullets into his back. Hecky questions Joe on why he's doing this, but Joe simply apologizes before finishing him off. Joe wipes his prints off the gun, takes Hecky's payoff money, and finally fires the flare gun. Joe pins the murder on the enemy, saying he was told to stay behind but sent out the flare as soon as they shot Hecky, and Morrison isn't pleased with the situation. After that, Joe returns to Bunny's Jungle Club, where he meets up with Ned Stacks, the lawyer who fought with Joe in the war and currently works for Benny. Ned offers Joe to keep that $50,000, but Joe refuses to be the mob's pet, which makes Ned wonder why Joe killed Hecky if not for the money. However, Joe doesn't give any satisfactory answer and congratulates Ned for acing the bar exam. In 1922 in Los Angeles, 3 young boys try to rob a movie theater, where they warn the cashier to stay quiet and hand over the money. But when she refuses, a young thug named Mickey starts to smash the booth. He is caught by the cops, and a woman rushes to Boy Scout Bill Parker, explaining the situation and warning him that even the cops are corrupted, so he should work to set them straight. In 1927, Bill becomes a rookie officer with the LAPD and quickly built a reputation for being too rigid, especially after arresting his captain's drinking buddy for drunk driving. Soon, the cops try to deal with a hostage situation and decide to send Bill in to negotiate, just to make things difficult for him. As the suspect continues making his demands, Bill pretends that he can't hear him because of the glass door between them, so that the man has no choice but to open the door, and Bill uses this opportunity to quickly take him down. Since then, no one dared to bully Bill, and the rookies always talked to him with respect. In 1947, Benny meets with Mickey and Sid at the Clover Club to discuss the blackmail exchange with Hecky. They show Benny the evidence and Benny orders them to burn it but is dissatisfied with them letting Hecky remain in this world. Sid promises to kill him, but Ned joins them to reveal that Joe has finished Hecky already, which makes Sid angry, as he was kept in the dark about Joe being part of their backup. When Ned returns the money that Joe turned down, Benny immediately becomes suspicious, wondering what Joe wants. Back at the LAPD, an officer explains to Joe that they found Jasmine waiting for Hecky with her bags packed and brought her in for an investigation. However, Jasmine doesn't tell them anything significant, as she talks about Hecky's stamp collection and refuses to have any connection with Mickey, claiming that she only works as a hostess in his club but hasn't interacted with him. The police ask about the blackmail material, wanting to discern if Jasmine knows anything about it, but she claims she knows nothing. She insists that the packed bags were for a weekend getaway, so Morrison eventually leaves Joe alone with her, saying that he might get some information out of her, as he knew Hecky. Jasmine is surprised as Hecky never mentioned Joe, but doesn't spend much time and leaves. The detectives are still suspicious of Jasmine, so Parker orders her to be tailed for the next 48 hours, and Joe is assigned the first shift as punishment for letting Hecky get killed under his watch. Just as Jasmine is about to leave the station, Bill and Morrison insist that Joe give her a ride home for her own protection, to which she reluctantly agrees. Ned tries to calm Benny and Sid's suspicions about Joe, but Benny orders Ned to find out what it is he wants or Sid will do it for them. Meanwhile, as Joe drops Jasmine off, a man quickly comes to the car, saying he had been waiting for her for a long time, but upon seeing Joe, he backs off and pretends that he was looking for someone else. Joe asks if Jasmine still takes photographs, and she explains that it is part of her work since Mickey likes being photographed with celebrities. However, she admits that she no longer takes pictures as a hobby, having given it up a long time ago. She rushes to the bathroom, which has dozens of photographs and negatives, gathers them in her camera equipment, and quickly stashes them in a bag in a train station locker. Joe follows her, but unknown to him, he is being followed by another man as well. Back at the police station, Bill demands that the detectives explain to him again exactly what went wrong during the Hecky case, so Joe explains that they got separated and Hecky was killed before he could reach him. An officer named Hendry believes Jasmine knows more than she is letting on, but Joe lies, insisting she knows nothing. Once the meeting is dismissed, Bill tells Joe that he was on the verge of bouncing him back to robbery homicide, but decided against it because Morrison vouched for him, and asks Joe to use this opportunity to make it up to them. The next day, Jasmine heads to work where she is called into Mickey's office to talk with Benny. They question her about Hecky's blackmailing, but she insists that she doesn't know anything and even goes so far as to claim that they actually broke up months ago. Benny seems interested in Jasmine and asks her to join him for dinner once he is back from his work trip. On the other hand, Sid is called over to a small restaurant to meet Freddie Steckler, but instead finds Freddie's uncle Carl waiting for him. Carl tells Sid that he used to be Mickey's best bagman back in the day. Sid tells him to get to the point, so Carl explains that he needs work and has 2 men named Mo and Jerry sitting inside his restaurant, the same 2 men Sid has been looking for. Sid puts on Carl's apron while his bodyguard beats Carl up, making it look like Carl had nothing to do with the setup and that Sid forced his way inside. Sid then walks through the back door of the restaurant and without saying a word, shoots Mo and Jerry at their table before calmly walking out. Meanwhile, Joe stops by Jasmine's apartment and offers to take the place of the detective currently tailing her, but the officer declines, so Joe decides to have a drink at Bunny's club instead, where he's spotted by Ned. Joe questions if Ned knows why Jasmine was waiting with her bags packed, but Ned counter-questions why Joe didn't take the money. Joe pulls out an old picture from his wallet and Ned urges Joe to burn the picture, saying that it would cause problems if anyone saw it. Ned claims that Joe used to show him the picture twice every day during the war, but warns him to move on or his life would be in danger. The picture is revealed to be an old wedding photo of Joe and Jasmine, who is Joe's ex-wife. In a flashback, Benny and Sid are sitting in a car with the two men Sid killed earlier at the restaurant. The men suggest going after Greenberg later. Believing the feds might be protecting him, Benny calls them chickens before repeatedly punching one of them in the nose until it breaks. But when Greenberg suddenly steps out of his house, Benny gets so annoyed that he decides to show them how the hit is done. He drags Greenberg out of his car and shoots him multiple times, unaware that Hecky and Jasmine are taking pictures of the killing. Once they get home, Jasmine urges Hecky to burn the pictures, but he refuses, seeing them as his ticket to money and a better life. Back in the present, the detectives arrive at the scene of Mo and Jerry's murder and speculate that the two men must have crossed Benny somehow. But another unit suddenly arrives, claiming that Morrison's team is taking over their case. Police Chief Horrall then pulls Bill aside and scolds him for interfering, explaining that his team had been working with Mo and Jerry, who were ready to testify that Benny killed Greenberg. Horrall warns Bill to find another crime in LA and stay away from Benny. Bill orders his team to leave the restaurant through the back door, then tells them that rumors suggest Benny killed Greenberg himself. He urges them to double their efforts and make sure they catch Benny before anyone else does. The next day, the detectives question several possible suspects connected to the recent murders. Most deny knowing anything, but one man accidentally reveals that Hecky had been blackmailing Benny over some pictures. Joe gets a call from Bill who tells him to push harder about the photos. Joe slaps the suspect twice, but the man refuses to say anything more and quickly demands a lawyer. Suddenly, Ned shows up, so Joe pulls him aside to talk privately about the other cops finding out about the pictures. This makes Joe worry about the danger Jasmine could be in, but Ned urges him to speak to her directly. Not long after, Sid surprisingly arrives at the police station for a voluntary interview, saying the cops have been dragging in every thug connected to the case. On the other hand, Leslie pulls Jasmine into a coffee shop and reveals that he was the one who tipped off Hecky, though he admits he had no idea Benny would be the one pulling the trigger. Jasmine denies being involved, but Leslie insists that Hecky owed him $5,000. Jasmine continues to deny everything and quickly walks away. Back at the station, Sid claims he was at home getting a trim when Jerry and Mo were murdered. He says he has a strong alibi and suggests they should be investigating their rival mobster, Jack Dragna. Sid then comments that Joe might even blame him for Hecky's murder, but claims whoever killed Hecky did the world a favor since he had a poor sense of humor. After that, the detectives place Sid in a lineup, hoping one of the two witnesses will identify him. However, the first witness, Carl, claims he didn't see the shooter. Then the second witness points to the detective standing next to Sid instead, putting the cops right back to square one. Meanwhile, in the Las Vegas desert, Benny insists that they should build casinos on the empty land, saying he can already smell money in the air. But the people he has brought in to convince the mayor are not convinced. Benny predicts that one day Las Vegas will become a glowing neon city built around making money. Though the others still doubt him, he admits the casino construction has not gone smoothly, but says the problems have now been dealt with. Suddenly, he opens the trunk of his car, where a terrified man climbs out. Benny explains that the man disappointed him, then casually pushes him into a large hole. He walks over to the pit with his gun, and he and the other men shoot the man dead before covering him in cement. In the detective's office, the squad discusses the possibility of planting a bug in Cohen's office. Since Benny visits there often, they are interrupted by a detective named Eddie, who explains that Carl was recently released from San Quentin and before his arrest worked as a bagman for Cohen. This makes it clear that Carl was the one who gave up Mo and Jerry's location. Morrison quickly orders the squad to find Carl, hoping he can lead them to the shooter, and eventually to Benny. Later, Joe visits Jasmine's apartment and tells her that the cops no longer have her under surveillance, meaning she appears to be in the clear. But Jasmine believes there is something strange about the way Hecky was killed. She says she does not understand why Hecky would go to Joe for protection, only to leave without the backup he hired. Joe counters by saying he does not understand why a man would drag the woman he loves into such a dangerous situation. Jasmine insists she was not involved in the blackmail scheme, but Joe points out that someone had to take the pictures, and it probably was not Hecky. He then reveals that he knows about the bag she left in the train station locker and takes the key from her purse, saying it will be safer with him. However, Mickey suddenly arrives, forcing Joe to hide in the closet while Mickey questions Jasmine about whether Hecky knew anyone who was a photographer. Jasmine says he might have met someone after they broke up, and Mickey asks to use the washroom. While Mickey is in the bathroom, Joe tries to slip out, but he spots Sid heading up to the apartment and rushes to the fire escape. Sid then tells Mickey that the cops are onto Carl and that Carl is asking for money to get out of town. Sid says he will meet Carl in Griffith Park to kill him and tie up the loose ends, while Mickey should go to the Clover Club to establish an alibi. However, Joe overhears the entire plan. Elsewhere, Carl waits for Sid but grows suspicious when 3 mobsters arrive instead. He quickly asks where Sid is, and they tell him Sid is on his way before suddenly opening fire. Carl narrowly escapes and hides near the merry-go-round. Joe reaches the park just as the mobsters get on the ride to chase him, so he turns it on, using the distraction to pick them off and eventually kill all 3. The rest of Joe's squad arrives soon after, turning off the ride and taking Carl into custody. Furious over the setup, Carl reveals that Sid killed Mo and Jerry, and that he was the one who gave Sid their location. He then agrees to testify in court, unaware that Sid is watching everything from behind a tree. Benny returns to Los Angeles in his private plane, but as soon as he lands, Bill and the rest of the squad arrest him for the murder of Abe Greenberg. Benny remains unfazed and mocks Bill, warning that he will look foolish in front of the entire police department if the arrest falls apart. But Bill refuses to back down after that. Joe calls Jasmine and assures her that she is safe now, since Hecky's death is no longer the focus of the investigation. However, before he can say more, he is called away to help transfer Carl, as the police believe Carl's testimony could be enough to put Benny away for good. Meanwhile, Jack Dragna orders his men to take over Benny's ongoing operations, but warns them not to start a war. He does not want Benny's men wiped out, he wants them working for him. Meanwhile, Horal calls for disciplinary action against Bill, accusing him of arresting Benny without enough evidence. Bill insists he will have all the required documents ready by the time of Benny's trial, but Horal reveals that the trial is already set for noon the next day. Bill immediately asks the mayor for a delay, but the mayor refuses. With time running out, Bill orders an APB and tells Morrison that their last chance is to find Sid and get him to flip on Benny. Otherwise, Benny will walk free. Elsewhere, Dragna's thugs begin taking over Benny's operations, starting with one of his bookmaking businesses. They trash the place and tell everyone to take their business to Dragna instead. When they start beating innocent people for no reason, the manager steps in, but they beat him nearly to death. Later, as Jasmine walks to her apartment, one of her neighbors tells her that Leslie stopped by while she was out. When she enters the building, she notices blood on the staircase and grows worried. She cautiously makes her way up to her apartment and finds a blood-stained note demanding money. Soon after, Leslie calls her and says he is already losing enough of his own blood, so he will not hesitate to spill hers if she does not pay. Meanwhile, Ned visits Benny's illegal casino, which is run by his friend Claire, and tells her to keep operating as usual because Benny will be out soon. He explains that Mickey will be in charge for now, which worries her. But before she can argue, Mickey calls Ned and tells him that Dragna's men have hit 4 of Benny's operations in the past 10 minutes. Mickey orders him to increase security at the casino, but before Ned can respond, they hear screams as Dragna's goons storm inside with loaded guns. Dragna's second-in-command Ace points out that there is another illegal gambling operation nearby. His men begin handing out cards with the address, while Ace announces that Benny's casino is now closed for renovations. He then orders his men to start destroying the place, but Ned steps in and warns him that Benny's customers will never do business with Dragna if Ace scares them by pointing guns at them. Ace sees his point, and Ned convinces him that it would be better for both sides to let the patrons leave before trashing the place as planned. The detectives move Carl to a safe house under heavy caution, warning him to keep the blinds down and stay inside at all times. They explain that 4 officers will be guarding him around the clock. Joe orders the windows to be barred, leaving only one bathroom window as an emergency escape. He then checks the area himself before finally feeling satisfied with the setup. Meanwhile, the rest of the detectives search for Sid, while he hides in a basement and plays the violin to pass the time. He then receives a set of shotguns disguised as flowers, before dressing a mannequin in a new suit and shooting it for practice. The next day, as Jasmine arrives at the Clover Club for her shift, 3 detectives sneak onto the roof. They plan to plant a listening device inside Mickey's office by drilling through the ceiling and hiding the microphone inside a light fixture. One officer is unsure about the plan, but another points out that the glass is frosted, meaning Mickey should not be able to see the mic or realize his office has been bugged. While the cops drill through the ceiling, Mickey is on the phone with Benny, furious that Dragna has been destroying Benny's businesses. But Benny remains calm and tells Mickey that Dragna only made a move because he underestimates him, urging Mickey to strike back. Before they can discuss it further, Bill arrives and cuts the call, claiming phone calls are not allowed. However, Benny's lawyer quickly points out that the court has granted Benny special privileges. Benny tells Bill to get to the point, so Bill lies and claims the police have arrested Sid and convinced him to testify. He hopes this will pressure Benny into confessing, but Benny sees through the bluff immediately. He says Sid is too smart to get caught and too loyal to ever rat him out. Benny then reveals that he has known Sid since they were 5, and that Sid once took a knife for him that nearly killed him. So he trusts Sid's loyalty more than anything, Bill says. Meanwhile, Mickey rushes out of his office and tells Ned to handle a few things. Ned then takes Jasmine into Mickey's office, where she explains her situation with Leslie and hopes Ned can help. When Ned asks why she did not just go to Joe, Jasmine says Joe has already done too much for her. Ned admits that Joe was the only reason anyone in their platoon made it back alive, then convinces Jasmine to let him give her the $5,000 she needs to pay Leslie off. Later, Jasmine meets Leslie on a bus, but he says $5,000 is no longer enough. He now knows Hecky's deal was worth $50,000, and he wants all of it. Jasmine tells him she does not have the money, but when Leslie puts a knife to her neck, she offers him the pictures hidden in the train station locker instead. She explains that Joe has the key, so Leslie gives her 24 hours to get it. Ned meets with Bunny, the owner of Bunny's Jungle Club and a local mobster who is out for blood after Dragna's thugs beat one of his men to death at the bookmaking operation. Ned suggests arranging a summit between Dragna and Mickey to calm things down. Bunny is unsure at first, but Ned insists that Mickey can be reasonable. Meanwhile, Mickey heads to one of Dragna's businesses in retaliation, where he beats up some of Dragna's men and shoots up the place. Elsewhere, Joe returns to his apartment and finds Sid already waiting for him with a gun pointed at him. Sid orders Joe to put his own gun away and Joe reluctantly obeys. When Joe asks why Sid is there, Sid knocks him out by striking him in the head with the gun. In a flashback to 1944, Joe has returned from the war and is still married to Jasmine, but he is clearly struggling with PTSD. One night he wakes from a nightmare believing he is still on the battlefield. In his panic, he chokes Jasmine and reaches for an imaginary knife, acting as though he is about to stab her in the chest while she cries and tries to push him away. When Joe finally snaps back to reality, he realizes what he has done and rushes out of the room. Back in 1947, Sid's man receives a call from the mole inside the detective squad who gives him the safe house address and password, revealing where they have hidden Carl. Meanwhile, at Joe's apartment, Sid handcuffs Joe to a radiator and interrogates him about Carl's location. When Joe refuses to talk, Sid threatens to tell the cops that Joe killed Hecky, which would put him in prison for life. But Joe remains unfazed. Sid then beats him with a baseball bat and points out that since he is already facing a murder charge, he has nothing to lose. He also reveals that he knows about Joe's relationship with Jasmine, before forcing Joe to choose between protecting Jasmine or protecting Carl. At the safe house, a couple of detectives are watching over Carl and preparing him for Siegel's hearing the next day. But Terry Mandel and another mobster soon arrive disguised as uniformed cops and make their way inside. Back at Joe's apartment, Joe tries to free himself while Sid continues mocking him, saying his wife left him for a loser like Hecky. This enrages Joe, making him pull desperately against the handcuffs. The phone then rings and Sid answers it, learning that his men have successfully infiltrated the safe house. He tells Joe to stay on the line, saying he will like what he is about to hear. An intense shootout breaks out at the safe house. The officers urge Carl to escape through the bathroom window, but before he can break it open, the attackers kill Carl and one of the detectives. Tug is badly wounded but still manages to open fire, killing one of the mobsters. The other escapes after being shot in the leg, while Tug eventually passes out from blood loss. Sid hangs up the phone and gets ready to leave, knowing there is no point questioning Joe anymore. But before he can go, Joe, still handcuffed, yanks Sid forward and slams his face into the radiator. Jasmine then arrives to get the keys, but Sid grabs her at gunpoint and dials 911, forcing her to report neighbors fighting and send the police to Joe's address. Before leaving, Sid tells Joe and Jasmine to burn their wedding album if they do not want it falling into the wrong hands. He promises to keep their secret as long as Joe cooperates. Sid then walks out of the building, turns himself in, and claims Joe abducted and tortured him. Meanwhile, at the safe house, the detectives are shaken after Carl is killed. Their only chance of keeping the case alive now depends on whether Tug, the surviving detective, can identify the shooter. Later, Joe visits Jasmine's apartment and admits that he feels responsible for Carl's death since Carl tried to escape through the bathroom window but could not get out because Joe had nailed it shut. Jasmine tends to Joe's wounds and says she feels guilty that Sid can use their wedding photos to blackmail him. The two then get intimate, unaware that Leslie is watching them from the window. At Bunny's jungle, Bunny and Ned arrange a meeting between Mickey and Dragna in a last-ditch effort to stop the two mobs from going to war. Bunny reveals that he makes money from both sides but is willing to shut them both out if it means keeping the peace. Dragna thinks he is bluffing, but Bunny explains that his men are furious after a black breadwinner was killed and warns that the situation could turn into a racial war. Dragna eventually agrees to a truce, and both sides decide to share the damage costs and pay 10 grand to the dead man's family before shaking hands. As Joe gets ready to leave Jasmine's apartment, he receives a call from the office saying Detective Tug will survive. Jasmine uses the distraction to steal the train station locker key from his keychain. Joe then promises her that he is not the same man anymore, saying he has fewer nightmares and more control over himself. Before leaving, he tells her that he wants to start over with her, but only if she is willing. Later, the detectives visit Tug as he recovers and questions him about the safe house shooting. Tug tells them he managed to shoot the surviving gunman in the leg, but unfortunately he cannot identify him. He lost his glasses during the gunfight, leaving his vision too blurry to get a clear look. With no solid witness left, the trial falls apart, and the judge orders all charges against Benny to be dropped due to lack of evidence. Benny then gives a statement painting Bill as a sophisticated thug, claiming he will do anything in his power to put him behind bars. That night, Mickey begins planning a party for Benny and accidentally walks into the building's darkroom. He notices the red light and asks the photographers what it is for. They explain that it allows them to view photographs without damaging them, which makes Mickey remember the red light bulb in Jasmine's bathroom. At that moment, he realizes Jasmine was Hecky's photographer. Meanwhile, Jasmine hears someone inside her apartment and assumes it is Joe. But when she enters, she finds Leslie holding her 6-year-old neighbor hostage. Leslie tries to take the key and Jasmine attacks him, but he quickly overpowers her. He then tells her she is going to act as the middleman, forcing her to promise that she will speak to Benny at the party. At the same time, Morrison tells Joe that they have made a list of everyone who knew about the safe house, hoping to find out who leaked the location to Siegel. The detectives now believe Joe is the most likely suspect, with one of them suggesting that Sid may have beaten the information out of him, and that Joe simply refuses to admit it. Later, Jasmine enters the club and is called into Mickey's office, where he tells her he knows she took the blackmail pictures. Jasmine admits it, but warns him that she is the least of their problems because she also has prints and duplicate negatives. She says they can have the pictures if they get Leslie off her back. Remembering that Joe told her about the bug in Mickey's office, she also reveals that Leslie is holding a young girl hostage, making Mickey and the others agree to help. Jasmine heads to Leslie's car and tells him that Benny has agreed to pay, but only if Leslie lets the girl go first. Leslie agrees and sets the girl free. Meanwhile, Joe is being interrogated when he gets a call from Eddie, who lets him hear Jasmine's confession through the bug in Mickey's office. Realizing she is in danger, Joe rushes out to protect her. An officer tries to follow him, but Joe quickly knocks him unconscious. At the train station, Jasmine and Leslie make their way to her locker while Sid and his men prepare for the confrontation. Leslie steps away as Jasmine opens the locker, only for her to discover that it is empty. Leslie furiously grabs Jasmine by the neck when he realizes the locker is empty, but Jasmine insists she has no idea where the pictures are. Sid then appears and warns Leslie that he is outnumbered, but Leslie responds by pulling out a grenade. Before he can use it, Joe attacks him from behind and beats him down. Sid's men take Leslie away, but Sid still demands the pictures. Joe offers to hand them over if Sid protects Jasmine, but Jasmine says making deals with them is pointless because they killed Hecky. Sid laughs hysterically at this, then turns to Joe and asks why he still has not told Jasmine the truth. On their way out, Joe tells Jasmine to take a train out of town, but before she leaves, she demands to know what he has been hiding from her. Joe admits that the moment he saw Hecky holding the film negatives, he knew Jasmine had taken the pictures. He explains that if he had arrested Hecky, she would have been dead within the week, and if he had let them leave town, the mob would have found and killed them both. Jasmine slaps him several times, but Joe insists he would kill 100 men to protect her. She slaps him one last time before getting on the train. Sid returns to the club and explains what happened, leading Ned to convince the others that they should give Joe what he wants. They then order Ned to arrange a meeting. Elsewhere, Bill is drinking alone in his office when Mayor Boren stops by. Bill assumes Boren has come to fire him, but Boren is actually grateful that Bill took responsibility and says he wants him to become the next chief of police. Bill points out that the LAPD already has Chief Horall, but Boren explains that Horall has been trying to embarrass him in the press and may be planning to run for office. Boren wants Horall brought down, and if Bill can do that, he will make him the new chief. Bill agrees, but insists he is not doing it for the promotion. Meanwhile, Ned meets with Joe to discuss the pictures, but Joe says he wants to meet Benny in person. Ned warns him that it is a risky move, but eventually agrees to arrange it. After that, Joe meets with Eddie, who reveals that he has known about Joe and Jasmine since they questioned her about Hecky's murder. After digging into Jasmine's background, Eddie found their marriage certificate. He tells Joe that he understands his instinct to protect the woman he loves, but advises him to hand the photos over to Morrison and use them to take Benny down. Joe says he will think about it before leaving. Bill later visits Tug after learning that he plans to resign, as Tug believes he is not cut out for another night like the safe house shootout. Bill tells him he is starting a new unit to root out police corruption and wants Tug to run it. He also asks Tug to find out who tipped Benny off about the safe house, and Tug agrees. The next morning, Meyer Lansky arrives in Los Angeles looking for Benny, revealing that they have business to discuss. This forces Ned to postpone Joe's meeting with Benny, and Joe reluctantly agrees. Benny meets Lansky in his hotel room, where Lansky scolds him for killing Greenberg himself instead of hiring a hitman. Benny insists the problem has been handled and argues that he did the East Coast bosses a favor, since Greenberg had been feeding information to the feds for 2 years and could have triggered a major case. They then move on to business, with Lansky questioning Benny's plan to build a casino in the middle of nowhere. Benny insists Las Vegas will make them a fortune because gambling is legal there, but Lansky and his men refuse to invest another dime. They have already put in $6 million, and now they want the missing money accounted for and paid back. Benny becomes furious and sees the decision as a betrayal by Lansky. Believing he voted against him, he flips the table, curses everyone out, and storms out of the room. But after he leaves, one of Lansky's men reveals that Lansky was actually the only person who voted in Benny's favor, even though it damaged his reputation with the other bosses. Meanwhile, Joe impatiently waits for Benny in the lobby, but Benny ignores him. Despite Ned trying to stop him, Joe confronts Benny, who takes the blackmail material before brutally beating him. Joe tries to fight back, but Benny coldly tells him that Jasmine is dead either way, and that it is up to Joe whether he wants to join her. Ned stays behind with Joe and warns him that there is nothing he can do to save Jasmine, urging him to stay away from Benny. But Joe secretly follows Ned back to Benny's residence, takes a gun from the trunk of Ned's car, then sneaks onto the property and opens fire on Benny through a window. Benny is struck multiple times, including 3 shots to the head, and dies instantly after that. Joe heads back to his car while Ned urges Sid to get as far away from the house as possible and burn the blackmail pictures. Sid is devastated, but Ned forces him to leave Benny's body behind. Soon, the police arrive at the scene and Joe joins them as they enter the crime scene. Ned quickly realizes that Joe was the one who killed Benny. Later, at Bunny's jungle, Ned confronts Joe and tells him that killing Benny was the wrong move. Benny's death has created a power vacuum, and Ned warns that Mickey and Dragna will likely end up in an all-out war. Elsewhere, Mickey meets with Lansky to discuss business now that he has been chosen to take over Benny's operations. Mickey assumes Benny was killed on the orders of Lansky and the other East Coast bosses, but Lansky tells him that if they wanted Benny dead, it would have happened much sooner. He makes it clear they were not the ones who pulled the trigger, then orders Mickey to find out who killed Benny and why before taking revenge.